They warned me about the water. I should have listened. When I was a child, summers at my grandparents' old cabin nestled deep in the woods felt like stepping into a fairy tale, until the lake came into view. It wasn't the kind of lake you'd find children laughing beside or boats lazily drifting across. It was silent, dark, and glassy, as if time itself dared not disturb it. From the moment we arrived each year, my grandparents laid down one rule with terrifying consistency: do not go near the water. Grandpa would repeat it often, his voice sharp but low, like he feared being overheard. Not alone. Not ever. Grandma, softer but no less firm, would usher me indoors any time I lingered too long by the windows. Her hands trembled slightly whenever she caught sight of the lake through the trees. Once, I watched her hang garlic by the door. I asked her why, and she only said, for protection. They never explained the rule. Never offered logical reasons or cautionary tales about drowning. Instead, their fear was quiet but constant, a presence in the house as much as the scent of cedar or the creak of the floorboards. As a child, I accepted their fear. But as I grew older, I began to think it was all superstition. They were just protective. Maybe overly so. Maybe they'd lost someone in the water, and it had twisted their memories into ghost stories. Years passed. Life pulled me away from the cabin and its haunted stillness. But last summer, everything brought me back. Mason and I were burnt out. Our apartment was a blur of takeout boxes, emails, and glowing screens. We needed silence, space, something that didn't buzz or ping. So I brought him to the place where silence lived. The drive felt endless, trees thickening around us like a tunnel. When the cabin appeared at the end of the gravel path, it looked untouched by time, weathered, stoic, waiting. Just like I remembered. Mason whistled. Wow. This place is beautiful. I smiled, but my eyes slid toward the lake. It shimmered through the pines, motionless. That first day passed like a sigh. We built a fire in the pit out back, roasted marshmallows, and shared dumb stories. Laughter came easier than I thought it would. But as the sun dipped low and the shadows lengthened, the lake caught fire with the reflection of the sunset. It was beautiful. And wrong. Too still. Too perfect. Mason leaned back in his chair, pointing with his drink. That lake's gorgeous. Why haven't we gone swimming yet? I hesitated. Then, maybe too quickly, I said, I wasn't allowed to. When I was a kid, I mean. He turned to me. What? Why not? My grandparents. They had this rule. Never go near the water. Why? He asked, more curious than concerned. They never said. They were just scared of it. Especially Grandpa. It wasn't about me drowning. It was like they believed something was in there. Mason smirked. Maybe they saw a monster. I laughed, but it sounded off. Or maybe they were just afraid of losing someone. Old trauma. Who knows? We fell quiet, listening to the fire crackle. But my mind wasn't on the stars or the flames. It was back in that house, watching Grandma sprinkle salt across the threshold. Remembering Grandpa staring out at the lake in the dead of night, like he expected something to crawl out. As we headed inside to sleep, the wind picked up through the trees. I glanced once more at the water. It looked like it was watching us. The next morning was warm and humming with summer life, bees buzzing lazily around the cabin, the scent of dew-soaked pine needles rising from the ground. I stepped outside early, letting the screen door creak softly behind me. Mason was still inside, snoring softly. Coffee in hand, I made my way down the gravel path that led to the dock. The lake was still again. Too still. It reflected the sky like a mirror, but it felt more like a lid, something pressed tight over secrets. A shiver crept down my spine. As I reached the water's edge, my foot paused on the wooden boards of the dock. My eyes drifted toward the reeds swaying at the far end of the lake. And suddenly, a memory, long buried, returned in a rush. I was maybe 7 or 8. I had snuck out of bed and crept down the stairs, drawn by the low murmurs of my grandparents' voices. They didn't notice me crouched at the landing. She should never know what happened, Grandma said. She's too young. She's the last one who carries the name, Grandpa replied, voice tight. And if that thing ever stirs again, it took your brother. It will take her, too. My breath caught. Even now, the words chilled me. Back then, I didn't understand what they meant. I thought maybe they were talking about some old family tragedy. A drowning, maybe. But in that memory, Grandpa looked haunted, not just sad. And Grandma was clutching a necklace made of black stones I'd never seen before. I turned back toward the lake. The same dock from that memory stretched before me, untouched by time. Hey! Mason's voice broke my trance. I turned to see him walking toward me, grinning and stretching in the sunlight. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. He reached the dock and looked out over the water. "You know," he said casually, "I was thinking we should take a swim later. Shake off the city grime." I forced a smile. "Maybe." We stood in silence for a moment. "There's something weird about this lake," I finally said. I remembered something. My grandpa. He had a brother. He drowned here. They never talked about it directly, but I heard pieces over the years. I think he thought it wasn't an accident. Mason raised an eyebrow. "What, like something pulled him under?" I nodded slowly. He looked at the water, then back at me. "That's spooky. But probably just grief, right? People tell themselves things to cope." "Maybe," I said. But I wasn't sure anymore. That night, long after we went to bed, I found myself lying awake. The wind rustled the trees gently outside. Mason was asleep beside me, breathing slow and deep. And then I heard it. A soft splash. Not far. Not wind. Not animals. It came from the lake. The next day began with sunlight streaming through the bedroom window, dappling the wooden floors in golden streaks. Mason was already up, cooking breakfast with a pan that hissed and sizzled on the old propane stove. He looked fresh, happy, utterly unbothered by the strange undercurrent that had settled over me. "Figured I'd make something hearty," he said, plating eggs and toast. "We've got a big day of lake lounging ahead." I forced a smile. I hadn't told him about the splash I'd heard the night before, how it had left me wide-eyed and cold under the covers. I told myself it was a fish. Maybe a beaver. Nothing supernatural. Nothing old and hungry. After breakfast, we packed a small bag with towels and a Bluetooth speaker. Mason brought a few beers. I slipped my grandfather's necklace, the one I'd found in the back of a drawer the night before, into my pocket. It was made of flat black stones strung together on fraying twine. I didn't know why I brought it. Maybe protection. Maybe just nostalgia. The sun was high as we walked the familiar path to the lake. The trees rustled gently, birds chirped overhead, and it all felt deceptively normal. The lake glimmered ahead, still as ever. But beneath that glassy surface, something ancient and patient waited. We reached the dock and kicked off our shoes. "You want to go in first?" I asked, only half joking. Mason laughed. "You were trying to bait me into being the brave one, huh?" "I'm just saying it's tradition. You're the one eager to swim." "Fair." He peeled off his shirt and stepped to the edge of the dock. That's when I saw it. Something moved beneath the boards. A shadow. Long and thick, gliding silently beneath the surface like a giant fish. But it was no fish. It moved with purpose, circling slowly under Mason's feet. "Wait," I blurted. "Don't jump yet." Mason turned to me, brows raised. "What's wrong?" "Just, don't go in. Please. I don't feel good about this." He frowned. "Is this about that story? Your uncle or whatever your grandparents were scared of?" I nodded, barely breathing. "I saw something. Just now." Mason sighed, trying to stay patient. "Babe, I know this place creeps you out a little, but you're just psyching yourself out." I took a step toward him. "Mason, I'm serious. There's something in the water." Suddenly, everything around us fell quiet. No birds. No wind. No buzzing insects. Just an eerie, oppressive silence that made the world feel like it was holding its breath. Mason looked around. "Okay, that's weird." "Please," I whispered. But then, as if trying to prove a point, he gave me a wink and leapt in. The splash shattered the stillness. I ran to the edge, heart racing. He surfaced a few feet away, laughing. "It's not even that cold." I exhaled, but something still felt off. Then, between the reeds on the far end of the lake, I saw it. Ahead. Just barely above the waterline. Moss-green skin, slick and mottled. Hair like algae draped across its face. Eyes too large. Too dark. Staring straight at me. "Mason!" I screamed. He turned to look, confused. "What?" Before I could answer, he dove beneath the surface with a splash. I waited. 10 seconds passed. Then 30. My lungs clenched. The dock swayed slightly under my feet. "Mason?" I called, louder now. No answer. I stepped back, then forward again, panic surging. "Mason!" Still nothing. My instinct screamed for me to run. But I couldn't leave him. I dropped the bag, took off my shirt, and jumped in. The cold punched the air from my chest. Underwater, the world blurred green and black. I opened my eyes, squinting against the sting, searching. Shapes drifted in the distance, reeds, logs. And something else. Something that moved like a person, but wasn't. I surfaced, gasped for breath, then dove again, my limbs heavy with fear. Still no sign of Mason. On my third dive, I felt something brush against my ankle. I spun, kicking wildly. Nothing. I shot back to the surface, coughing, and swam for the dock. My arms trembled as I climbed out, my body slick with lake water and adrenaline. I screamed his name again. It echoed across the woods. And then, from the reeds, a ripple. Something slid back beneath the water. Gone. The silence that followed was total. Not just the natural hush of the woods but something unnatural, a suffocating, almost tangible quiet. My scream had barely echoed before being swallowed by the dense air. No splash followed Mason's dive. No bubbles broke the surface. Only that one ripple, disappearing into stillness. I stood frozen on the dock, dripping wet and shaking, scanning every inch of the water. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to break free. Mason! I yelled again, voice cracking. No movement. I ran along the dock, peering into the shallows, the reeds, the deeper middle. The sunlight shimmered off the surface like it was mocking me. He was just here. He had been laughing. And then, nothing. I jumped back into the water. This time, I dove deeper, kicked harder. I opened my eyes and searched. Twisting shadows. Tangled plant life. Rocks. But no Mason. No body. No limbs. No trace. The only thing I found was the necklace that had fallen from my pocket. It floated in front of me, perfectly suspended in the green murk. I grabbed it, clutched it tight. My lungs screamed, and I shot back to the surface. I treaded water, gasping, turning in frantic circles. "Where are you?" I whispered. "Please, where are you?" Something brushed my foot again. I thrashed backward and nearly went under. But this time, I saw it clearly, a hand. Human-like but too long. Too pale. Webbed fingers with moss trailing between them. I swam to the dock with everything I had left and clawed my way up, breath ragged. My legs collapsed underneath me, knees slamming onto the planks. And that's when I saw it. At the edge of the reeds, where the water grew dark, the figure rose slowly, half submerged. It wasn't Mason. It was the thing. Tall, gaunt, with skin that looked like it had never seen the sun. Hair tangled with lakeweed. Its face was eerily human but twisted, its eyes black and wet, lips parted just enough to show sharp, glinting teeth. And it stared at me. Not hungrily. Knowingly. I scrambled back, crawling like a child. My foot slipped between the dock boards and I fell hard onto my back. When I sat up again, the creature was gone. I sat there for an hour. Maybe longer. I don't know how much time passed before I found the strength to move. When I finally did, I ran. Stumbled through the trees, branches scratching at my arms, my legs burning. Back at the cabin, I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed emergency services. The dispatcher asked my name. My location. Details. He went under, I told them, voice raw. And never came back up. They sent out a search team. Divers. Helicopters. Dogs. For hours, the lake was filled with men and machines, combing every inch. They found nothing. No body. No clothing. Not even a footprint in the soft mud around the dock. They looked at me with pity. And then suspicion. Was it a fight? An accident? A suicide? I couldn't explain. I didn't even try. I just sat there, staring out at the water. And the water stared back. That night, after everyone left, I stayed awake in the cabin, lights on, the old necklace still wrapped around my hand. I knew now what Grandpa had feared. What Grandma had prayed against. It wasn't a myth. It was a warning. And I hadn't listened. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the water. The reeds. The creature. Mason's face right before he vanished beneath the surface. It haunted the inside of my skull like a looping reel, his laughter, the sudden silence, the nothingness that followed. At dawn, I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, watching the lake through the trees. The air was thick with mist. It curled around the trunks like fingers. The lake didn't ripple. It didn't breathe. It just waited, glassy and endless. The search crews returned that morning. More divers. A canine unit. A drone with a thermal camera. But still, Nothing. Eventually, they asked me to leave. Not unkindly, but firmly. I wasn't under arrest. There wasn't enough evidence. But I was too unstable, they said. Too emotional. They didn't say it aloud, but I saw it in their eyes. They thought I was lying, or worse, that I'd done something. I packed our things in silence. Every item I touched felt like it belonged to someone else. Mason's hoodie still smelled like his cologne. His phone buzzed once with a message from his mom. I couldn't bear to read it. Before I left, I walked to the dock one final time. The lake was just as I remembered it from childhood, calm, cold, and deceivingly peaceful. I stepped to the edge and stood there, gripping the necklace in my hand. I don't know what you are, I said aloud, voice trembling. But you took him. And I know you've taken others. There was no answer. Only the gentle lapping of water against wood. I knelt and tied the necklace to the base of one of the dock's support beams. A tiny charm, protection, or maybe a warning to the next person who dared walk this far. I didn't cry. There were no tears left. I drove back to the city in silence. When I got home, I couldn't bring myself to unpack. I left Mason's suitcase untouched by the door. Days passed. Then weeks. I spoke to police investigators, therapists, his family. I told them everything I could without sounding insane. Not about the Nixie. Not about the hand. Only the facts. He jumped, he vanished, and we never found him. Late one night, I received a call from a blocked number. When I answered, there was only one word spoken, low and strange and wet. Soon. I didn't sleep for days after that. I started researching. Old lake legends. Drownings with no bodies. Folklore. I found stories from all over the world about creatures that lured people into the water, sometimes with song, sometimes with silence. They were called Nixies in some places. Naki. Raaki. Undines. Names didn't matter. The fear was always the same. I learned my grandfather had a younger brother named Caleb. Born in 1932. Died in 1944. Cause of death, presumed drowning. No body recovered. No surprise. Eventually, I returned to the lake one last time. Not to swim. Not to stay. I brought with me a wooden sign. On it, I painted in bold red letters. Danger. Do not swim. Deadly current. I nailed it to the dock and left. Some part of me knew it wouldn't stop the next person. People never believe until it's too late. But I had to try. And maybe, just maybe, someone would see the truth hidden in the warning. That the lake isn't just a body of water. It's a mouth. And it's always hungry. Months passed. Seasons changed. I moved on, or tried to. I took a new job. I went to therapy. I avoided water. Even bathtubs made me uneasy. But something pulled at me still. The dreams were the worst, vivid and impossible. I would see Mason, suspended in water, eyes open, lips moving, trying to say something I couldn't hear. One morning in early spring, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a single item, the black stone necklace I'd tied to the dock support. The twine was damp. The stones glistened. Tied around it was a note written in shaky but familiar handwriting. I'm okay. Come back. I froze. It was Mason's handwriting. I didn't believe it. I couldn't. But hope crept in like dawn light through a cracked curtain. A week later, I went back to the lake. The air was warmer, the trees budding. I stood on the dock again, staring at the surface. Please, I whispered. If you're there, if it's real, bring him back. The wind shifted. Then, the water bubbled. Not a ripple. A rising. And then Mason emerged. He broke the surface slowly, blinking at the sunlight. His skin was pale but warm. His eyes, still his, locked onto mine. He pulled himself up onto the dock, dripping and trembling. I ran to him, dropped to my knees, pulled him into my arms. I thought I lost you, I sobbed. I thought I was lost too, he whispered. But something. Let me go. He told me pieces later. Not much. He didn't remember time passing. Only shadows, songs under the surface, and a presence that watched him. Studied him. Then one day, it simply released him. As if deciding he no longer belonged. We left that place together. We didn't tell the world. Who would believe it? But we sold the cabin. Moved far from lakes and forests. And every year, on the day he returned, we light a candle and place the necklace beside it. To honor what we lost. And what we got back. The following year, life began to resemble something close to normal again, our version of it. Mason and I moved to a quiet town near the coast, where the breeze smelled of salt and sea instead of algae and dread. The lake had released its grip on us, but we hadn't forgotten. We never would. Mason took a job teaching marine biology at a local college, a strange irony, maybe, given what he'd endured, but somehow, it helped him heal. Understanding water from a scientific point of view, exploring it safely, above all, on his terms, it gave him a sense of control again. I started writing. At first, it was journaling. Then short stories. Then, finally, a book. Not exactly a memoir, but inspired by what had happened. I called it The Hollow Below. A few publishers rejected it, calling it too dark, too fantastical. But one small indie press took a chance. To my surprise, it found an audience. We kept our lives quiet, intentionally so. We didn't talk much about the lake, not publicly, not even between us unless dreams stirred it back up. But when we lit the candle each year, we sat together in silence, fingers entwined, the necklace resting in a glass bowl beside the flame. On the second anniversary of Mason's return, he proposed. It wasn't grand or dramatic, just a quiet dinner in our backyard, the soft hum of cicadas in the background, stars beginning to bloom overhead. He slipped a silver ring onto my finger, carved with small waves and a stone that matched the ones from the necklace. Yes, I whispered before he even asked. Our wedding was held on a cliff overlooking the ocean. We kept it small, just us, a few friends, and my grandmother, who cried more than anyone. As we said our vows, a strong breeze swept across the cliff, sending the veil dancing. Mason looked at me then with tears in his eyes. I never thought I'd come back, he said. But you were the reason I did. We both knew the truth of that. We took a honeymoon to Iceland, a place full of water and myth, but this time, with no fear. We stood beside waterfalls, walked through geothermal springs, and even took a boat into the midnight sun. And the water, this time, felt clean. Alive. Forgiving. Some nights, Mason still dreams. He wakes breathless, but I'm there, holding his hand. And sometimes I do too, visions of green light below the surface, voices calling from deep trenches, but then I look at him beside me, real and warm, and I know the worst is behind us. We never visited the lake again. We didn't need to. Our lives now are full of ordinary things, burned toast, inside jokes, rainy afternoons spent under one blanket. And every time I catch Mason watching me with that quiet, grateful look in his eyes, I realize, this is our miracle. Not that he came back. But that we found joy again after the darkness. That we chose to begin again. And every day, we do.